Yesterday, the world marked the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. To mark the day, the UN has launched a campaign entitled 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence to galvanize action to end violence against women and girls around the world. It is saddening that violence against women is a growing threat to the Maldives as well. According to a research conducted in 2007, 1 in 3 Maldivian women aged 15 to 49 experience some form of physical and/or sexual abuse during their lifetime. In a nation that follows a religion that calls on mankind to honor women and grant them their rights, it is saddening that violence against women is still an issue that needs to be uprooted. I'm Zaisha Namir, and this is the Fourth Estate. On 1st July 2014, President Abdullah Yameen established the Ministry of Law and Gender to oversee all government functions related to families, children, women, people with special needs, and human rights. These functions were previously handled by the Ministry of Health and Gender, which is now the Ministry of Health. To discuss the issue of violence against women in Maldivian society and other issues threatening the well-being of our women, joining me tonight is Dr. Hala Hamid, Minister of State for Law and Gender. Dr. Hala holds a PhD in Gender and Development Studies from the University of East Anglia in the UK. Dr. Hala, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
To start off, what is the mandate of the Law and Gender Ministry?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this program, Jaisha.
Welcome.
The Ministry of Law and Gender has several responsibilities. All these relate to vulnerable groups, and we focus on key vulnerable groups including disabilities, child rights, women, and the elderly. Overall, we are also looking at human rights issues, and our work is mainly focused on promoting and protecting the rights of these vulnerable groups. Within our ministry, we also have several institutions, and these institutions include Kodakudingehiya in Vilimale and Amanghiya in Vilimale, as well as 4 Amanghiya in 4 atolls, that is Hadal Kurdufushi, Shavin Fedu, Tawe Mandu, and Kaftal Tinadu. In addition, we also have the Guradu Markaz, which is the home for people with special needs, and we also have ETCC, which is Education and Training Center for Children in Mafushi. Yeah.
Now, what is the current government's policy with regard to gender equality and women's empowerment?
The current government has 2 main policy areas. One that is on gender empowerment. One is the empowerment of women economically, socially, and politically. And the second one is zero tolerance on violence against women. And following from these two main policies, we have 6 pledges. And these include eliminating barriers for women to join the workforce, that is introduction of flexi working hours, working from home, and also fostering opportunities for women's participation in the workforce and in the political sphere, and enhancing economic empowerment of women, and also enactment of relevant legal instruments, as well as protecting families from experiencing negative consequences from divorce, and ensuring equal distribution of matrimonial property after divorce.
Now, yesterday, the 25th of November, was the International Day of Violence Against Women, and 16 days of activism to create awareness on VAW was launched in the Maldives, which is Violence Against Women. So what is the significance of such a campaign?
I would like to look at the background of this significant day. The UN resolution was adopted in 1999, declared in 25th November as the day of International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women, in remembrance of the 3 Mirabal sisters who were brutally murdered in the Dominican Republic in 1960. And they are sisters who were activists for political and social freedom. This is the significance of 25th November. And in the Maldives, we have the 16 days of activism led by NGOs, the civil society, and primarily Hope for Women and GOG, which is Gender Advocacy Working Group, are doing important things important activities are carried out to ensure that people are more aware of violence against women issues, people are more aware of the legal instruments we have in place, and also bringing the stakeholder agencies into perspective so that women who face these violent situations will know what to do, where to go, and when to go there.
Now, according to the Maldives study on women's health and life experiences 2007, 1 in 3 women aged 15 to 49 experience some form of physical and or sexual abuse during their lifetime. What is being done by your ministry to address the issue of violence against women?
Violence against women is a very major problem in the Maldives. And as you are already aware, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, enforced in 2012, has entrusted the Family Protection Authority with the mandate of protecting women from violence. And the Family Protection Authority reports to our minister. And Family Protection Authority has undertaken many programs to educate women on violence against women, educate the public, in fact, and also to ensure that they have the means to report to they have the means to seek assistance by reporting to the Family Protection Authority, as well as they have referral systems established with the Gender Ministry and the police service as well. We at the Gender Ministry also have cases being reported to us, and we look at the cases, assess the cases, and help the victims to get psychosocial support. And the police, when they get a domestic violence case or violence against women case reported to them, they also report to us, and we have a joint effort to combat this.
Do you face any challenges in doing this?
Yes, one of the major challenges is that women come forth to report, but later they back out and they are not in a position to give us more information on the cases, and therefore the systems fail to provide them the assistance they need.
Now, what laws and legislations are in place to protect women's rights and promote gender equality in the Maldives?
Yeah, the 2008 Constitution gives us all equal rights. We have the principle of non-discrimination in our new Constitution, and that guarantees equal rights for all groups of people. And in terms of laws, family law of 2000 needs to be reassessed, reviewed, and amended. And the next important law we have for women's empowerment is the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, which was passed in 2012. And this guarantees women the right to, this in fact criminalizes domestic violence, which is a very major step ahead for the prevention of violence against women. And the recent two laws, Sexual Offences Act and Sexual Harassment Prevention Act, were passed this year and enforced this November. And now we are working on a gender equality bill, which will guarantee women the right to education, the right to health services, and the right to seek employment, irrespective of the situation. And this will be a very major step towards gender empowerment. Even now we have formal equality, but we have structural inequalities. That means the process to, or the access to gain these rights, to the opportunities are there, but there is not enough access for women to have equal rights to employment or equal rights to health services. And we also have the international obligations we should bear in mind. One is CEDAW. As you all know, CEDAW is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and this convention is key to the principle of non-discrimination. And we also have the Beijing Platform of Action obligations. This has 12 key priority areas, including education, health, poverty, employment. All these are key areas in the Beijing Platform of Action. And we also have the OIC Plan of Action for the Advancement of Women. As an OIC member, we have the avenues to seek OIC support in our work for the advancement of women. We recently attended a Women Ministers Conference in Azerbaijan, and there we saw that many Islamic countries are seeking gender equality, and they are pursuing gender equality as a priority, which made us very happy.
Now, are these laws being implemented effectively?
That is a very difficult question. So far, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act has also not been enforced in the most effective way, but work is in progress. The Family Protection Authority has undertaken work towards a commentary which is already published, so that people know what the law is about and what rights they get in domestic violence situations. But the Sexual Harassment Act and the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act and the Sexual Offences Act, they were enforced, these acts were enforced just recently this November. So there is a lot of work to do in terms of effectively implementing this. And for the Gender Equality Bill, I would say that we are hoping that Majlis would not take that long in processing it once it goes to Majlis. And this, I believe, would happen in early January.
Now, you mentioned some laws and legislations in addition to some obligations that we, the Maldives, have to follow.
Yeah.
Now, do you believe these obligations or these laws and legislations are being implemented effectively?
That is a very difficult question. To my knowledge, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, enforced in 2012, still has difficulties in implementation. It gives huge rights, huge mandate for the police as well. But then we see that the sensitivity to gender-based violence cases is still lacking. And I'm sure the Maldives Police Service is working very hard on ensuring that gender-based violence cases are attended to effectively. The Family Protection Authority, mandated to undertake the main task of the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, is doing a great job in creating awareness. They have also prepared a commentary for the law, which is accessible to everyone, and they also have developed a national strategy for domestic violence prevention. I can see that these are improvements in implementing the law, but there is a lot of work to be done.
Now, there are 8 Millennium Development Goals set by UNDP, but the Maldives has achieved 5 out of the 8 Millennium Development Goals, and there are 3 goals that we haven't achieved. Now, out of the 3 goals, there's one goal that we have still failed to achieve, which is ensuring gender equality and women's empowerment. Now, this points to the existence of certain gender disparities in our society. Now, how much of a serious setback is this to our development?
Before I talk about the gender disparities, the areas where we have gender disparities, I would like to mention that we have reached gender parity in education and also in provision of health services. And our main concern is economic empowerment. There is huge disparity in terms of employment and also in terms of the fact that female-headed households are poorer, weaker, and their social status is lower. And these are main concerns. If you look at education, we see that we have attained gender parity in primary and secondary, and we are reaching towards parity in tertiary as well. And I am very happy to note that the high achievers in secondary education is also girls. And in fact, when we look at the graduates from the Maldives National University, this year's graduates in 2 batches showed that 70% of graduates from MNU were women. These are very important facts we should remember when we talk about gender disparity and gender parity. But when we look at the employment side, we see that although women occupy 53% of the civil service, only 15% are in the higher ranks of the civil service. Only 15% earn above 15,000 rupiah, which is, as you may know, a very average income for the current living standard of the Maldives. And in the informal sector, women are into very small scale businesses. For instance, 68% of women in the informal sector are into small scale businesses that are run without taking any loans. Women have a problem in seeking loans because property ownership disparity is there, and therefore it's very difficult for women to pursue huge investments through a loan scheme. But right now, I'm very happy to note that we have small and medium enterprises schemes with 40% dedicated for women, and these will show improvements in time, but it will be gradual.
Now, do you have any special programs aimed at promoting the engagement of young women in society?
Yes, we do. We are providing business skills programs. We are conducting business skills programs in the atolls, and we are also working on ensuring that young women go into marriage with the knowledge of prenuptial agreements. Because in our family law now, it is allowed that prenuptial agreements can be made, but people do not have that knowledge. So we have conducted some workshops to create awareness among the young women and men that prenuptial agreements can bring them both secure life. This does not mean that prenuptial agreements are not only in relation to divorce situations. Prenuptial agreements can also lay out the lines of conduct when in marriage. So when young women go into marriage with this knowledge, they will know exactly where they would stand, and they will know what to do upon divorce or what they will be receiving upon divorce. For instance, matrimonial property can be equally distributed when these agreements are made and before they go into marriage. And as for business skills, we are also trying to engage more women into economic activities. So we have started these programs to educate women on how to start a small business and how to market their products, and even go into bigger ventures. And I would like to note that we are trying to work with the Ministry of Economic Development, as they have a very interesting and very promising project, the Sabah Maldives project, where home-based women are shareholders of Sabah Maldives, and their products are marketed by this joint venture. And because of this, a lot of women will get a better income than just working at home on their own. So we are trying to engage with Sabah Maldives to promote women's economic empowerment.
Now, looking at the state of women's empowerment in our society, in politics, for example, there are only 5 female MPs in a parliament of 85 members. Now, the number of female councillors isn't also a substantial figure. Does this mean more women have limited chance of progress in the political arena?
Of course, we have difficulties in the political arena. But again, I would like to tell you about the significant improvements we have made. The governor and the vice governor, for instance, of the Maldives Monetary Authority are women, and 3 of the 5 civil service commission members are women, and Human Rights Commission is headed by a lady, and Family Protection Authority board is chaired by a lady, and also the Police Integrity Commission is headed by women. So we have key distinguished women in key posts. But then if you look at the complete administration, we see that still the women do not have a very huge percentage in the political arena. As for the parliament, I would say that 5 out of 85 is very miserable. But then the difficulties in contesting for elections make it very difficult for women to be voted for. We need more women to be voted for than we want more women to vote, if you know what I mean.
Now, what do you think are some ways whereby we can promote the involvement of women or their engagement in politics?
I think it's the attitude and the social norms that need to change. As I said before, we have structural inequalities, and this includes the fact that women in politics are not seen as a very positive thing in our society. Still, although we have a lot of women participating in political rallies, when it comes for candidacy, the women are not on top priority. I think the political parties should look into this, and the political parties should engage in work that gives women more opportunity for contesting in all the elected posts. That would bring a change. But right now, as I said before, there isn't equal access for women to be part of politics as being elected to Majlis and also other elected posts. But we are happy to note that now there is no gender bar for women contesting for the highest post, the post of the president. But to get there, we first need to get into Majlis, we first need to get into the councils and see that women are respected as equal politicians, just like men.
We are in conversation with Minister of State for Law and Gender, Dr. Hala Hamid. We'll now take a short break and return in a few minutes.
Neutro Special Crackers eta bike itbar hoda pave.
Varam mir.
Neutro Special Crackers ki packet gagin adada biskode kuleve agiya miru biskode.
Varak kamada biskode.
Binda binda kala Neutro Special Crackers. Lonomed tomato mirhuge avapi dessa.
Miru King garlic chili sauce.
Mirko furihamako kaleveni miso surige.
Miru King tomato sauce.
Kumbeko me sauce kamakunude hamarangani.
Miru King chili sauce.
Sauce veggia rahe besunje.
Miru King fried chicken chili sauce. Enjoy the great taste.
King tomato sauce.
Tom Garden, imported and marketed by Miami Traders. Phone 331-8850.
Sena, koba seltani monita.
Ade kon sel miharos red wave ngabani enha sufia ge wefari haisate karo fian kolle.
Enha sufia ge wefari red wave komandara katias. Hahe ge badloga haste karo fe wanatati kiya.
Mariam ba red wave ngefani emi hum vikauga emmem swikanama takati ga gubodo ge ekak posnule.
Eden hama sate ka ga wa.
Enha sufia ge wefari haisate karo fian kolluma red wave majidi maga.
Red wave mart roshani
maga. Red wave plaza sayid kuek fan maga adi red wave mall majidi maga wada ti ba ge jeevat tinste karo fian jama kolla.
Da.
Welcome back. How confident are you that the Ministry of Law and Gender would make a difference over the next 4 years?
I am very confident that the work of the ministry would lead to improvements and advancement women's status in our society, because we are trying to bring in more women into formal sector and also trying to engage more women in the informal sector at medium and higher level enterprises. For instance, when we talk about bringing in women into the formal sector, we are trying to advocate for flexi working hours and working from home for women with very young kids, and we are also trying to get the daycare facilities upgraded. We are trying to standardize the daycare facilities that would allow more women to come in and work in the government, in the formal sector. But these things still need time. We have already gazetted the daycare center regulations, and we have given 6 months for them to standardize, and we will be monitoring them, and that will give women confidence to leave their kids in daycare facilities. We are also trying for the removal of GST from these social service centers, which would allow more women to take their kids to daycare centers. Right now, what happens is, at some point in time, young women, we have very young women in the civil service, young women will need to take a break for family responsibilities. I applaud the women in our civil service because they are working very hard, they are multitasking, and this is something we should celebrate. Even though we have to let women take a break when they have very young kids, we should try to bring them into the workforce by giving them incentives, by allowing them to return to their jobs. So these things need to change for us to make a very successful program carried out. So I'm very hopeful that with the current administration, the work we are trying to do will succeed given a good budget. Right now, we have a very limited budget, and we are relying on external funding for most of our programs of advocacy and for programs to ensure that women have a secure and fulfilling life.
Now, what are some of the incentives being provided to women to promote them to work in the formal sector and engage more in the civil service?
As I mentioned before, upgrading daycare services, making it accessible for women in civil service is one thing. And also, the civil service allows for flexi working hours now. It is up to the ministries to design flexi hour working policy. And these things would allow more women to come and work, because right now what happens is they have to take breaks, and because they don't have flexi working hours, they tend to take no pay leave or rather stay home and discontinue their work. This is why we don't find as many women continuing their jobs, and this makes them lag behind their male colleagues. For instance, even after PhD, women PhD holders, when they become pregnant or when they have very young kids, they have to take leave, and when they return to work, they find that they are not on par with the graduates, their male colleagues. So these things need to change. I mean, we need to create the facility for educated women to return to work when they can, and provide them with the incentives to work from home, to contribute as consultants, or at least do some work when they can.
Now, what would be your vision for Maldives women and society in general?
In general, I would like to see gender parity in the workforce, because I believe that economic power leads to more bargaining power in the family and in the social sphere and in the political environment. So if more women are working, and if more women are economically independent, they are bound to go up the ranks in the civil service. They are bound to be more powerful in the social sphere, and also to be eligible candidates in elected posts.
Now, do you have any concluding messages to the public?
Yes, I would like to see more women candidates in the elections in Majlis elections and in the council elections, because once women are included in the decision making process, then we find that the decisions made by these in these organizations will be more positive towards women's situation. We need the women's voice to come into all spheres in the Majlis, in the executive and in the judiciary as well.
Sorry to cut you short, but that's all the time we have for now. We had a very insightful conversation. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is Faiza Shanamir signing off, hoping to return next week to discuss yet another issue of national and social importance. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening.